Welcome back to Storyova, the place where powerful stories unfold and real-life drama meets life lessons you'll never forget. If you love emotional, thought-provoking stories about family, betrayal, and unexpected justice, you're in the right place. Today's story is one that might hit close to home for many people. It's about trust, heartbreak, and a decision that changed everything. This is the story of a mother who gave everything to her son, only to be discarded when she needed him the most. Margaret had always believed that family was everything. She was the kind of mother who stayed up late when her son had a fever, who worked extra shifts just to afford his school trips, and who never once complained when life became difficult. Her son, Daniel, was her pride and joy, the center of her world. After her husband passed away when Daniel was just 12, Margaret became both mother and father. She sacrificed her dreams, her time, and even her health, just to make sure Daniel never felt the absence of a parent. She told herself that one day, all the love she gave would come back to her. For years, it seemed like it would. Daniel grew up to be successful. He had a stable job, a nice car, and a growing family of his own. Margaret couldn't have been prouder. She would often sit by the window of her modest but cozy home, smiling as she thought about how far her son had come. That house meant everything to her. It wasn't just walls and a roof, it was filled with memories. Every corner held a story. Daniel's first steps in the living room, birthday parties in the backyard, quiet nights spent talking about dreams and fears. Margaret believed she would live out her remaining years there, surrounded by those memories. But life had other plans. It started subtly. Daniel began visiting less often. His calls became shorter. When Margaret invited him over for dinner, he would say he was too busy. At first, she understood he had responsibilities. After all, a job, a wife, kids. But the distance kept growing. One day, Daniel showed up unexpectedly. Margaret was surprised but happy. She welcomed him in with a warm smile and quickly made tea, just like she always used to. But something felt different. Daniel didn't sit comfortably like he used to. He seemed distracted, almost impatient. "Mom," he began, avoiding eye contact, "we need to talk about your living situation." Margaret's smile faded slightly. "What about it?" "Well, you're getting older. Living alone isn't safe anymore." Margaret felt a small knot form in her stomach. "I'm managing just fine, Daniel. I know you think that," he said, "but it's not practical. What if something happens? You need proper care." She studied his face. There was concern there, but something else, too. Something colder. "I can hire help if needed," she offered. Daniel shook his head. "That's expensive. And honestly, we've already found a solution." Margaret's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "There's a really nice nursing home not far from here," he said quickly. "Great staff, clean facilities. It's the best option." The words hit her like a slap. "A nursing home." She repeated softly. "It's for your own good, Mom." "For my own good," she echoed, barely above a whisper. She wanted to argue, to tell him she wasn't ready, that this was her home, her life. But she looked at her son, the boy she had raised, the man she had trusted in. Something inside her hesitated. "Have you already decided this?" she asked. Daniel paused. "Yes." That one word shattered her. Within weeks, everything changed. Margaret packed her belongings, though packed wasn't quite the right word. Most of her life stayed behind. The furniture, the photo albums, the little decorations she had collected over the years. "You won't need all this at the facility," Daniel had said. She took only what she could carry. The day she left her home, Margaret stood at the doorway for a long moment. Her hand rested on the frame as memories flooded her mind. She wanted to cry, to scream, to refuse. But she didn't. She simply walked away. The nursing home was clean, quiet, efficient, but it wasn't home. Days blurred into each other. Margaret found herself sitting by the window again, but this time, there were no familiar sights. No memories. just strangers passing by. Daniel visited occasionally at first, then less, then almost not at all. Margaret began to feel something she had never expected to feel toward her own son. Not anger, not even sadness, but clarity. She started to notice things she had ignored before. The way Daniel had rushed the decision. The way he had dismissed her concerns. The way he had barely looked back when she left the house. And then, one afternoon, she overheard something that changed everything. 2 staff members were talking near her room. "Her son is already planning to sell the house," one said. "Really? That fast?" "Yeah. Apparently, he's been wanting it for a while. Good location, big property." Margaret froze. Sell the house. The realization hit her like a wave. This wasn't about her safety. This wasn't about care. This was about convenience, about money, about getting her out of the way. For the first time in her life, Margaret felt betrayed, truly betrayed. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every sacrifice, every memory. And then, slowly, something inside her shifted. Margaret had spent her entire life putting others first, but now it was time to think about herself. The next morning, she asked the receptionist for access to a phone. She made a call to an old friend, Linda, a retired lawyer she hadn't spoken to in years. "Margaret?" Linda's voice was surprised but warm. "It's been so long." "It has," Margaret said softly. "And I need your help." Over the next few days, Margaret learned something crucial. The house was still legally hers. Daniel hadn't transferred ownership. He had assumed she would simply let it go. That assumption would be his biggest mistake. With Linda's guidance, Margaret began to take action. She arranged for the house to be evaluated, then listed quietly, carefully. She didn't tell Daniel. Weeks passed. Then, one day, she received the call. The house had sold, not just sold, but at a price higher than expected. Margaret felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, sadness, but also power. For the first time in a long time, she was in control of her own life. She used part of the money to move into a small, comfortable apartment, one where she could live independently, on her own terms. The rest she secured for her future. Then, she made one final call. Daniel answered on the 3rd ring. "Mom." "Hello, Daniel. Hey. I've been meaning to visit. Things have just been busy. I sold the house." Silence. "What?" "I sold it," she repeated calmly. You what?" His voice rose. "Mom, you can't just." "I can," she said firmly. "It was my house." Daniel sounded panicked now. "But I was going to. I mean, we were planning." "I know what you were planning," she interrupted. Another silence. He tried to recover. "Mom, I was just trying to do what's best for you." "No," Margaret said quietly. "You were doing what was convenient for you." Her words hung in the air. "I raised you, Daniel," she continued. "I gave you everything I had. And when I needed you, you put me aside. That's not fair." "What's not fair," she said, "is being treated like a burden in the home I built." Daniel didn't respond. "I'm not angry," she added after a moment. "But I won't be taken advantage of." "So, what now?" he asked, his voice smaller. "Now," Margaret said, "I live my life on my terms." She hung up. In the months that followed, Margaret rebuilt her life. She made new friends, picked up old hobbies, even traveled a small trip at first. Then, another. She discovered something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. As for Daniel, he struggled, not just financially, but emotionally. The consequences of his choices caught up with him. And though Margaret never closed the door completely, she made one thing clear: respect was no longer optional, it was required. This story isn't just about revenge, it's about boundaries. About self-worth, about the moment you realize that even the people you love the most must treat you with dignity. Margaret didn't just sell a house. She reclaimed her life. And sometimes, that's the most powerful thing you can do. Margaret thought that after that phone call, things would settle into a quiet distance between her and Daniel. But life rarely moves in straight lines. A week after she told him about selling the house, Daniel showed up at her apartment, unannounced. Margaret had just finished watering the small plants on her balcony when she heard a knock. It was firm, urgent. She already knew who it was. When she opened the door, Daniel stood there, looking more disheveled than she had ever seen him. His usual confidence was gone. His posture slightly slouched, his eyes tired. "Mom, we need to talk." Margaret studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in." He walked in, glancing around the apartment. It was modest, but warm, neat, lived in. There were books on the shelf, a soft throw on the couch, and sunlight filling the room. "This is where you're living now?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded slowly, as if trying to process it. "It's smaller than the house." "It's enough," she replied calmly. "More than enough." They sat down across from each other. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel leaned forward. "Mom, I think we got off on the wrong foot." Margaret didn't respond. "I mean, everything happened so fast," he continued. "The nursing home, the house. I didn't handle it the right way." "That's one way to put it," she said quietly. He sighed. "Okay, I messed up. But selling the house without telling me? That was extreme." Margaret tilted her head slightly. "Extreme?" "Yeah," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "That house, it meant something to all of us." "To all of us," she repeated. "Of course. It was our family home." Margaret's expression hardened just a little. "It was my home, Daniel." He hesitated. "I grew up there," he said, "and I built it." She replied. That silenced him. Margaret leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady. "Do you know what's extreme?" she asked. "Being told you have no say in where you live, being moved out of your home like furniture, being treated as if your life is an inconvenience." Daniel rubbed his face, clearly uncomfortable. "I didn't mean it like that. But that's what it was. I was trying to help you." "No," she said firmly. "You were trying to simplify your life." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because deep down, he knew she was right. The silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, Daniel's voice softened. "I was under a lot of pressure, Mom." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Pressure?" "Work, the kids, expenses. Everything just felt overwhelming. And when I looked at your situation, I thought, if you were in a place where professionals could take care of you, it would ease things." "And selling the house?" she asked. He hesitated. "That would have helped financially." There it was. Finally. The truth. Margaret nodded slowly. "Thank you for being honest." Daniel looked up, surprised. "I wish you had been honest." "From the beginning," she added. "I didn't think you'd agree," he admitted. "So you made the decision for me." "I thought it was the best option." "For who?" He didn't answer. Margaret stood up and walked to the window. Looking out at the quiet street below, "When your father died," she said softly, "I was terrified." Daniel listened, saying nothing. "I didn't know how I would raise you alone. How I would keep the house, pay the bills, be both parents at once." She paused, "But I figured it out. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary." She turned to face him. "Do you know what never crossed my mind?" "What?" he asked quietly. "Getting rid of you because life was hard." Daniel's eyes dropped. "I never saw you as a burden," she continued. "Not once. Even in the hardest moments." Her words hit deeper than any anger could have. "I'm sorry," Daniel whispered. Margaret studied him carefully. This wasn't the defensive, impatient man from before. This was her son, stripped of excuses. "Sorry doesn't undo what's been done," she said gently. "I know," he replied. "But I want to fix it." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, She walked back and sat down across from him again. Fixing it doesn't mean going back, she said. It means moving forward. Differently. Daniel nodded. Okay. You need to understand something, she continued. Our relationship has changed. I figured, he said. Quietly, I won't rely on you the way I used to. That stung. But he accepted it, and I won't tolerate being treated like an afterthought, she added. You won't be, he said quickly. Margaret held his gaze. We'll see. Another silence. Then Daniel asked something unexpected. Are you happy here? Margaret looked around her apartment at the sunlight. The plants? The quiet? Yes, she said, and she meant it. Daniel exhaled slowly, as if releasing something heavy. I'm glad, he said, for the first time since he arrived. His voice sounded genuine. They talked for a while. Longer, not about the house, not about the house, about money, but about simple things. Life, memories, the kids. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. When Daniel finally stood to leave, he paused at the door. Can I come visit again? He asked. Margaret considered the question. Yes, she said. But call first. A small boundary, a necessary one. He nodded. I will. And then he left. Margaret closed the door and stood there for a moment. She didn't feel victorious. She didn't feel bitter. She felt steady, like someone who had finally found solid ground after a long storm. Days turned into weeks. Daniel did visit again, and this time, he called first. Then again, and again. Slowly, carefully, he began to show up, not just physically, but emotionally. He listened more, spoke less, asked instead of assumed. Margaret noticed, but she didn't rush to forgive completely. Trust, she knew, wasn't rebuilt overnight. It was rebuilt through consistency, through actions, through time. One afternoon, Daniel brought his children with him. Margaret's grandchildren ran into the apartment, filling it with laughter and energy. Grandma, they shouted. Margaret smiled, her heart warming in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. She knelt down and hugged them tightly. In that moment, she realized something important. Her story wasn't just about loss, it was about transformation. She had lost a house, but she had gained clarity. She had lost blind trust, but she had gained self-respect, and in doing so, she had given her son a chance to grow, too, not because she owed it to him, but because she chose to. Later that evening, as the sun set outside her window, Margaret sat quietly with a cup of tea. She thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the decision, and the aftermath. If she had done nothing, if she had simply accepted her situation, her life would have been very different, smaller, quieter, controlled by someone else's convenience. But she hadn't. She had taken a stand, and that made all the difference, because sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most meaningful changes. And sometimes, the moment you choose yourself is the moment your life truly begins. If you've ever felt overlooked, taken for granted, or pushed aside by someone you trusted, remember this: you have a voice, you have choices, and it's never too late to take your life back. Thank you for being here with where stories don't just entertain, they empower. And this one reminds us all that respect isn't given by time, it's earned by how we treat each other.
That's all for today's story. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. This is Storyova, where your story matters. And I'll see you in the next one.